Hello, everyone, and good whatever moment of this wonderful day you are enjoying on your time zones as you are watching us or listening to us live or later on through the recording. And welcome to yet another conversation, part of our May series. And today we will be discussing burnout at work. We will be looking at how we can best identify and address it from the roots. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co host for the next hour. We have Jessa working her magic backstage, and we have an amazing lineup of speakers. Now, while Jessa will bring them up on stage, I will just say a wholehearted welcome to everybody in the audience. And please do use the comments and the chat generously. First and foremost, help us know that everything is up and running, and just maybe drop a few notes and let us know where you're connecting from. And this way, we will also travel around the world through your little notes. But also, please consider the chat your own conversation space. And whatever it is that we are addressing with our panelists, do drop your own stories, your own thoughts, your own opinions on the topic. And that is such an amazing way and such an amazingly generous way to keep this community learning from each other. I do see a first note coming in, so at least everything is working. Also, just a small logistics heads up. If at any moment in time any of you experience either audio or video hiccups, just get off the link and then reconnect, and hopefully everything will be restored. I do see comments coming in, so that is a great first achievement of this conversation. Now, let's make the most out of our time here today. And what I will do, just as usual, I will pass the e-mic around clockwise as you appear on my screen. And first and foremost, kindly shortly introduce yourselves. And do share with us what makes this topic so meaningful to you personally that you said, I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna show up with my insights and with my energy. Anuj, so good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Minola. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who's tuned in. My name is Anuj Kathuria. I'm dialing in from Mumbai, India. After having spent 22 years in the corporate life, I decided to hang my boots and start my own consulting service, do something of my own, and started my own consulting firm called Cognitio. What drove me to join this panel and why it is close to my heart? Pretty simple answer. I have been on both sides of the coin. I have been a victim of burnout and I have been a part of the solution task force for it.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Shari, good to see you and so good to have you in this conversation.
Thank you, Manila. And hi, everyone. My name is Shari Chernak, and I am a consultant at Mercer focused on transformation across the people and HR space. And I am passionate about this topic and wanted to be a part of the conversation because I have been doing a lot of mentoring over the course of my career, and burnout is a frequent topic that I've encountered in that regard. I've encountered it as a head of HR in my previous role, and like many professionals, I've also been impacted by it. So I look forward to a fruitful conversation today.
Thank you. David, I so knew that you wouldn't miss this one for the world. So good to see you.
Well, thank you. Good to see all you, and thank you so much for having me. Full disclosure, I am not an HR professional. I've never worked a day in human resources, so let's just get that out there in the open. But I'm the author of two books. The first is Overcoming Distractions, and the second, more recently, is Overcoming Burnout. I work one-on-one with busy professionals that have ADHD, burnout, and sometimes both kind of collide. So, and then I'm now offering corporate workshops and keynotes on how to dismantle burnout from a street smart and real life point of view. So, um, I am here because I did experience burnout, and I think I didn't really understand the warning signs. And I was saying to myself over and over again, man, I'm burnt out. Man, I'm burnt out. I was burnt out, and I really needed some resources. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. And making this panel complete for the day, Anna. Good to see you. It's been a hot minute since we shared a conversation space.
That is true. I mean, thank you really for having me, Minola, and also, I mean, what a wonderful panel. I would like to thank also all of our friends that are now watching us and take their time and see how they can do things about that, which is a serious situation. My name is Anna. My last name is Mama and Lucky. I hope that I'm gonna be lucky in life. And with that being said, I would like to tell you that my work is very much around how to make the organizations perform better regarding the structure, the design, and the people factor. So I started as an HR and I developed myself to an organizational development and design distinction. Um, but 10 years ago, I had a lot of concerns regarding how people experience the work environment. It's then that I started becoming officially a coach. I became accredited by the Coaching Federation. So I started really providing coaching to the executives because there was a lot of need over there. Through this experience, I had experienced a lot of organic burnout, and I would like to discuss a lot about that today and see how we can help.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for being here and for showing up for this topic that, let's face it, is not a comfortable one to address in many organizations, in many parts of the world even. So let's maybe start outlining our space with sharing what are your definitions and what are your understanding of what burnout is. And while we go through that, can you also share some of the most common ways that you encountered in which burnout is misunderstood or misused, in our realities, whether at work or even outside of work? And you know that I always start diagonally. So, David, I will ask you to be our pioneer for the day. And then everybody, unmuting competition open and you build your own conversation. So, David, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I think some of the more common uh, characteristics of burnout are obviously that exhaustion, that being tired. I think there needs to be an understanding of kind of the difference between stress and burnout. I mean, burnout is just stress day after day, week after week, month after month. Um, I work with people that have literally been in chronic stress for 10 years and then finally, I hate to say it, woke up and realized that they needed to do something. Uh, but I think you kind of mentioned the misconceptions, and one thing I'm really trying to get across with people is that it's not just the work environment and the workload, and the leadership that doesn't know how to manage properly and understand burnout, but many times it's so complex, such as people bringing personal stress into the workplace and it shows up there. um, and one of the biggest reasons I find is caregiving, and I've experienced that firsthand, where taking care of a aging parent and having to bob and weave and handle all that, not only disrupting schedules and weeks and rescheduling things and then becoming backed up on work, but just the stress 24/7 that comes with that. So I think, with all due respect, on social media, I think that there's a lot of people out there that oversimplify burnout, but it's very complex, and we need to really understand all the components of burnout and what somebody might be dealing with.
Thank you, David. Where shall we go next? Let's see.
Let me
Anuj.
add some let me add some parts to it. For me, burnout is like fever. It's a symptom, it's not a disease by itself. Now, when someone has fever, it's an indication, it's a warning signal that something in your ecosystem is not working right. And unfortunately, being in the rut of our corporate lives and the kind of personal lives we live, we, like David said, we often tend to ignore it or not understand that we are actually going through a burnout phase. Now, from an organizational standpoint, there could be multitude of reasons why people or someone is going through a burnout. It could be excessive work overload, which leads to chronic stress, unrealistic expectations, for that matter of fact, a lack of control that a person feels in an organization where he or she doesn't have any influence to do their tasks. They feel powerless. Unfortunately, it also stems in certain parts of the world from poor workplace relationships where you are being bullied or the environment is very toxic, or for that matter of fact, there are insufficient rewards or recognition for the kind of work you do. And many a times, it stems from your personal lives, your home life. People do tend to not being able to compartmentalize both elements of personal and professional lives. And as I said, it's a very complicated subject, and I agree with what David said. Most often than not, it is misconstrued as stress. And when you try to discuss it with your peers, or when people see that there's an impact on you, instead of understanding and having a conversation with the impacted one as to what's going through the person's mind, what is the crux of the matter, we inadvertently tend to, you know, leave it with saying, okay, this guy can't handle stress, or he's not strong enough. Hey, man, you need to build your emotional intelligence. Hey, man, you need to, we are in the corporate world, you need to be strong. But they fail to understand that if someone else can be there, you can also be there tomorrow. And the reasons for everybody would be very different. The fact of the matter being, it's there, its acknowledgement is the first step towards fixing the problem. And just acknowledging doesn't mean that, okay, I have burnout. Why do people actually go through the burnout phase? At an organizational level, there are multiple factors. I'm sure we'll discuss those in the forthcoming conversation as to why it stems. It's just a warning signal, as I said again, that something in your fabric, if culture is the DNA or the fabric of your organization, something in your fabric, some threads, some chromosomes are malfunctioning.
Mm.
And it's a warning signal, it's a lull before the storm. It's, to me, it's contagious. If one person has it, I'm sure there will be many, and we are not able to figure it out.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anush. Shari, I saw you unmuted there for a second.
Yeah, I think David and Anuj have covered a lot. I think there are certain organizational factors behind burnout and why we are seeing it as much as we are. I think there is a tendency for organizations to run very lean, and there's a culture. Some call it a hustle culture that prioritizes, encourages, and sometimes rewards having people run at a very high speed continuously, and at a pace that may not be sustainable. So, was speaking just yesterday about the tendency to work in sprints, but sprints in a racing metaphor are supposed to be short bursts of energy that are then followed by rest. Whereas in organizations, people tend to sprint and then they go on to the next sprint and the next sprint, and it's essentially a marathon full of sprints. And when you couple that with the fact that we are all human, we all have lives outside of work that could be adding additional stress. The two, the organizational and personal factors can collide in a way that causes people to feel not only burnt out, but also like they don't have the ability to address it for a myriad of reasons that I suspect we'll talk about today.
Hmm. Anna.
So I believe that the burnout and its meaning is fully covered by what has been discussed right now. We need at the same time to ensure that this term is also acknowledged by the organization what it means. So it's not only what is the meaning that we will give to that, but also the meaning that the organization would give to that, so that they address it. And I mean, as we say on the title of this panel, if the organization does not really define what burnout would be for the specificity of the organization and the environment that it operates, because yes, environments are different, cultures are different, not only within the organization, but also in the surrounding environment. So we need to make sure that there is a common way of defining things within the organization itself. It's only then that HR and the leaders of the organization will tackle the issue. Because I've seen a lot of variations, and it's okay. I mean, it's okay to have a variation. The only most important thing is to make sure that you have defined it, because that's the only way really to do something about it.
I would invite you to tackle an under topic of our round of answers so far. And that is a part of the conversation around burnout that tends to become very polarized and very elegantly put effervescent. So, what and how much is the individual dimension of burnout? And what and how much is the organizational dimension of burnout? And Shari, I would invite you to give this one a first go, and then everybody please jump in.
Sure. So I think that they are, it's hard to tease out. It's kind of like an equation with multiple variables. So some individuals are more prone than others to burnout for reasons of um, working style, things they may be managing, how they react to stressors. And some organizations are more likely to drive burnout because of the nature of the work, organizational culture, tendencies around staffing, etc. So the two factors can each independently cause burnout, and they can reinforce one another. And then I think the interesting dynamic at play is how the individual and the organization essentially acknowledge or don't acknowledge, react or don't react, and do that kind of dance around, okay, I feel burnout. Some of the circumstances in our organization may be causing burnout, and we need to take care of our people. How do we talk about it, and how do we address it?
Anna.
Yeah, I would like to add to these dimensions explained now, and thank you, Shari, for bringing that up. Being very much in the organizational design spectrum, I would like to very explicitly say that the organizational part, the organizational factor to burnout is huge. And why I say that? Because when employees, I mean, even they are prone to or not to burnout, experience troublesome ways in order to do just their job, processes that are so complex, a lack of empowerment in order to do something, needing multiple authorizations in order to move on just simple tasks. A leadership capacity that is not at the level that it is required in order to move things. Um, all these dimensions add so much and challenge the resilience of the employees themselves. So I would like to say that the framework that someone operates within has a huge influence on how he or she would experience the work life. And when this person is experiencing other things outside of the work life, it will add a lot. So having an organization operating effectively, it is so much important so that we ensure that people can really do their job in their best way.
I was actually thinking about how far along in the conversation would resilience pop up. And you just reminded me of a recent discussion I had at work where we were looking into um, how much is the expectation from individual and personal resilience is an not spoken expectation to compensate for probably lack of organizational resilience, process resilience, governance resilience within the organization. Anuj, would you like to add anything?
I heard something a decade and a half back from one of my mentors, and he said, you are beginning your career and you have two choices: either become part of the environment and be a puppet, or have the courage to tailor the environment and make it your own product. Unfortunately, the latter is very tough to do. And there are only 4 to 5% individuals across the world who have that kind of internal resilience to do that. I absolutely agree with what Anna said. And I like to take it to a step further. It is actually the root of this lies in the business operating model architecture, which becomes from where your organization design flows, from where you look at what is going to be the fabric of your organization. As I said earlier as well, burnout is nothing but a symptom of a disease. And that disease is not something that lies at the surface. It is in your ecosystem at the very depths of how you have defined the organization, how your operating model architecture befits. Resilience, fortunately, unfortunately, is a very different element and very personalized for every individual. When we hire people, unfortunately, there is no assessment which can match what the organization requires versus what that individual brings on the table. And even the resilient ones will break once you are tapped on multiple times. There is a physical and emotional limit to what one can withstand over a period of time. So yes, we need to build people's resilience, definitely, but that's a secondary element. Why not go and fix at the root, which is actually causing the various symptoms and the various different variations of why burnout really happens in the organization? Whether it is the expectation mismatch, whether it is a toxic culture, whether it is a hustling culture. I'm sure these all are required. But like Shari said, there needs to be a break after a sprint. You can't keep sprinting again and again, again and again, again and again. You will fall down and you will break down. Even a machine in the manufacturing setup needs downtime. What about human downtime to recharge, to regenerate? Do we have that? The answer is no. It's up to an individual to decide when his or her limit has been reached. And unfortunately, it's very difficult for an individual to decide that because there are multiple factors at play over there. So it's not, as I said earlier, not an easy problem and not an easy solution. It requires a lot of effort from the organizational leadership, and it is not something that only HR can correct by its own. We can be catalysts for the change. We are not the ones who are driving it. It has to be all hands joining in, from the leadership, from the founders, from the owners, from the governance committee, from the boards, to address, first acknowledge, and then say, okay, we need to address this.
Mm.
Else, as I said, it's going to be a lull before a storm hits you. And there are multiple examples.
Yeah.
Gallup recently published a study about a year back. 38% loss in productivity only because of burnout. 26% extra turnover because of burnout issues. And we are in an environment where we can't bear that, unfortunately.
Yeah. And we will definitely pick up on the topic of who or how is the accountability and ownership of addressing burnout split inside the organization. But David, any thoughts on this slice of our conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. You have a perfect storm brewing when you have an organization that just operates day to day on chaos, and then an individual that brings certain habits, work habits, and other stressors into a working environment. Um, I'm working with somebody right now, and we just met yesterday, where um, this person was bringing certain habits like not being able to speak up, um, trying to do the job that was way too big for one person. That's not that person's fault, but they're trying to do it. They don't have the resources. And then the organization is just literally operating in chaos. And one of the examples that came up was this person finally begun to kind of figure out the internal tools to get people into a room and solve a problem that was plaguing this organization for weeks and months. This person took one day off because of personal reasons, and they came back, and the senior vice president completely blew up the entire plan that 6 or 7 people worked on for hours, which resulted in having to do this over and over. This happens over and over again in organizations. There's a term we use in my book, Overcoming Burnout. We're co-founders of our burnout, and I believe that to be absolutely true. And it is that perfect storm. If you've got somebody that brought individual habits like not being able to speak up, not being able to manage their time and energy effectively, procrastination, maybe a person with ADHD going into a chaotic organization, then that's just absolutely fueling burnout across the board.
I was thinking about asking what are the signs of burnout, but then I caught myself thinking signs of burnout might already be too late. Are there any early warning signs that is the path that someone is already on? And Anna, I would be very interested to hear from you first, because you have this combination of org design, org development, business strategy, and executive coaching that you look at this topic through. And can we also look at some of the ways in which HR professionals can enable individuals in an organization to spot these early warning signs?
Thank you very much for the question. Thankfully, we do have the tools to do that. And most organizations right now, they do have surveys in order to hear the people, take their feedback. At the same time, there are so many other things that we collect feedback through. Why I say that? Because HR has a way to listen to what is going on within the organization through all these ways. By examining exit interviews, by understanding performance management issues coming up, by having specific tools in place right now, much more than in the past, we also have a lot of AI tools in order to understand nuances of behaviors that show that something does not really perform well within the organization. So HR um, has the ability now, and I should say a little bit the obligation to utilize all these tools in order to understand what is going on. And while understanding all these things, the next very important is to find ways to mitigate and finally resolve these kind of problems. Um, Not an easy thing, um, because a lot of times, as it has already been mentioned here by Anuj, Sari, and David, a lot of things are sometimes distilled within the organization and how it operates, um, which means that HR needs to see things in a very strategic way. As in everything, we need, first of all, to find ways to create the business case. In order to shape the business case, you really need, as an HR, to understand what makes the business successful. And when you understand what makes the business successful, and you know what is the strategy to go about it, then you can create the business case. You can take the stakeholders by your side by making things much more relevant to the winning factors for the organization, for its business. So, burnout is very much affecting productivity. Burnout is very much affecting on how we serve our clients and how we serve our own business strategy. So making the case for it by collecting all this evidence through the tools that the HR has is going to help HR really strategize around that. And to strategize around that, you need very much to create the treatment, the recipe treatment for these elements. For example, when you have a burnout that is caused out of a lack of clarity around the career progression criteria, then you might need to do something about that. Or when you have burnout because it comes out of leadership capabilities that are, let's say, in fault, then you need to do something about that.
Mm. Thank you, Anna. Who wants to take it further?
Uh, I'll be quick. I think one big thing that organizations can do is they can listen when they start to hear people complain. Um, One of the things that I work with people on uh, is to make sure that when I send them a bunch of questions before we start working, and I ask them, what are the things you complain about over and over and over again? Because those are the things that need to be fixed. And I think people in leadership positions need to maybe decipher the difference between maybe this employee's just complaining or there's more of a problem here. And they need to kind of be able to distinguish the difference. If someone is asking for resources, maybe to hire more people or to delegate certain things, and leadership doesn't supply that resources, maybe it's an adequate budget to hire the right person, and then people are dropping the ball and things aren't getting done, then that's a problem. But I think one thing I see over and over again that people complain to me about is that nobody is listening to them. It's things like, I get triple booked on meetings. I decline the invitation. They invited me again. People need to listen to the people that are doing the work, because most likely there's burnout festering there somewhere, and there's a problem. We talk about the causes and the root causes. Okay, one of the ways we can do that is by listening. It's a very simple thing.
Thank you. Shari.
Yep, I would reinforce that, and to build on that listening. thread that David just mentioned, I think there are a number of things that organizations um, can and should do. One is on making sure that people managers are equipped to spot and respond to um, symptoms of burnout. And, I think HR needs to play a role in in enabling a culture of well-being, but the responsibility lies with all people managers because they are closest to the individuals and they are most likely to do that. So I think giving people the tools and the resources to say, okay, I'm seeing certain things on my team or somebody has come to me directly. And then I think in terms of the other element of listening is thinking about having a variety of channels open. So, not everybody is going to be able to go to their manager necessarily. Some people may want to go to HR. Some people may want to go to a third party, maybe a mentor or teammate that they trust. Some people might prefer to do things using technology so that they can communicate in a way that is comfortable to them. So, I think having that readiness and willingness to listen, and then the preparedness across a variety, the entirety of the management and leadership population is important. So it doesn't just become, okay, HR is hearing it, but isn't necessarily, um, possessing the power to change things.
Thank you. Anuj, bring this one home.
I have a little divergent view on that. Uh, and I know my friends will hate me for this. See, I mentioned earlier, to me, burnout is like fever, right? Now, that's again a symptom. There could be multiple early warning signals, like Anna said. You could see rise in customer complaints. You could see a drop in organizational productivity. You could see a rise in your turnover on a monthly or a quarterly basis. There could be increase in sick leaves. Managers or leaders or team managers could actually see notice detachment, or people literally shrugging away work, or I don't care attitude. These are pretty much early warning signals before you cross that line. Now, listening, yes, I absolutely agree, is of the most important element. But if I'm just listening and not doing anything about it, am I fueling the burnout, or am I actually looking at solving the crisis from, or fixing it from the roots? There could be for certain, like in the medical term, there are certain vaccines for certain diseases, and then there are specific injections given to each patient. Burnout is a very individualistic factor. There could be multiple factors at play for one individual. There could be two factors at play for third individual. A one shoe fit all approach doesn't work. Somebody could be burnt out because of lack on clarity of expectations, and there could be a set of population who's burnt out because of excessive workload. There could be a third set of people in the organization who are in that rut because of uh, at a specific location, the toxic leadership culture, which is not letting them voice out what they really want to do. HR can listen, agreed. But I think this is where we need to step up and wear the actual hat of a business partner and work to really look at solutions that are more individualistic, that are more personalized, hyper personalized, and hyper contextualized.
Hmm.
Just having a, a vaccine given to all, not gonna work out. Yes, it'll ease the pressure for a time being, but then again, it's gonna come back again, and boom, you're gone. That's my viewpoint.
Well, we are frustratingly at 20 minutes before saying goodbye. And I would really love to give our audience something actionable. So once we wrap up this panel and hopefully we leave people inspired and motivated to address this issue, what would you recommend them to do? How would you recommend them to look at their organizations, to look at people around them, to look at themselves, to start to address identifying the true causes of burnout at work? And I will leave that question there. We will do this one popcorn style, as inspiration strikes. And I will just like to thank everybody who is here with us. Welcome people who joined later, and just anticipating the questions before we will start getting them, that this conversation is being recorded and you can always go back and re-listen or recommend it from absolutely the same link that you used to join. Just a few minutes after the live is wrapped up, you will find the recording there, or go to hackinghrlab.io and you will find it there. So, where to start? What to do? What is the first step on the road of 10,000 steps?
I can start from my point of view, working with people who are burned out, because as I mentioned, I am not an HR professional, but the things that just keep coming up over and over again. First of all, I think the organization needs to get serious about educating people about burnout, what the causes are, what it feels like, from the person that's burned out, all the things that could happen, the physical symptoms, the mental systems, people not getting their work done, how it impairs executive functions, all those things, and start to kind of recognize those signs. So the first step is for them to actually get serious and get educated about burnout. And that's not just sitting on social media or on Instagram, listening to a couple gurus. So really understand the topic. The next thing is, again, over and over again, people I work with, they are working in a chaotic environment and they need to identify the chaos. Again, I'm not an HR person, I'm not a CEO, but it just keeps coming up again and again and again, is there are certain factors that the individual just doesn't have control over. So they need to reduce the chaos wherever it is. And if that's bringing in a professional to help with leadership development or management styles, or whoever that person is. So on the individual side, uh, the people need to develop the confidence to speak up diplomatically, tactfully, with kindness. You don't want to get to the point where you're so frustrated that you go into your boss's office and you just explode, because nothing good is ever going to come of that. And then from there, try to control the things that you actually can control, knowing that there may be some organizational factors and structures that you may just have to live with. The end all be all is that you go your separate ways. And I've worked with more people who literally had to burn the boats. I've worked with people who actually not only had to quit their job, but they had to sell their house and move across the country. They were so burned out. They just had to quit their job. Others have had to take 6 months leave of absence. So understand burnout, reduce the chaos, and understand how bad it can get.
Thank you, David. I don't know if you hear it, but an ambulance just passed by right under my windows. So, Shari.
Yeah, I think I think definitely everything. Yes, plus one to everything that David just said. I think organizations do need to kind of they need to train leaders and managers on what burnout looks like. They need to be I think they need to be candid about, sometimes there are going to be really tough pushes, and to the extent that burnout is because of certain temporary factors, seasonality, because there are certain things that need to get out the door, and so forth. They should both communicate that and also think about, what is the beginning and the end? Because I think sometimes burnout can feel like a kind of trap where there is no light at the end of the tunnel. So I think setting expectations, thinking about creative and resourceful ways to staff and to create a little bit more, whether it is Slack, whether it is the ability to collaborate and share, work and load balance, I think can all be things that organizations can do, especially when they can't necessarily just hire more people to solve the problem. That would be a nice thing for organizations to be able to do if they can, but in many cases, that's not an option. Certainly not an option for a mid-level manager whose team is experiencing it. And then on the personal side, with people I've mentored, I've talked to them about a kind of decommit, recommit process. So people are very they're very passionate about their work, they're very committed, they want to do a great job, they may want to be with an organization for the entirety of their career. And if they think about, maybe I feel a little bit less committed for a while, instead of, trying to, do, like the get the exceptional rating from a performance management, I'm just going to do what is expected of me for a little while. I'm going to kind of tune it down from an 11 to an 8, and not you know not malinger, not do my job, but just kind of bring a different approach to my work for a little while, one that maybe burns the candle a little bit less brightly. And does that give me the space to to assess my relationship with my work, to assess my ability to jump back in a healthier way, and to enable me to recommit? And it's really great to observe in terms of seeing how people are able to come back and say, I think I have a healthier relationship with my work. I have a better handle on what I really need to do versus things that I was doing that maybe didn't need to be done to the extent that I was doing them, or in the way that I was doing them.
Mm. Thank you. We now have the competition for the hot seat of going last. Let's see who wins it. Anna, would you like to go next, please?
Sure, yeah. To your urge really to provide practical solutions to the HR, and in relation to what has already been said, I would like to say that a lot of times in HR, we might have a lot of ambition in order to do things, and we might do too many things, and we try really to have an impact. In our efforts, though, to do all these many things, we might have a lot of incomplete actions. For example, something that has already been brought up in the comments, we go out and we make surveys, and we take feedback from the employees, and then silence. We don't do much about what we've heard. So yes, we listened, and then what did we do? What I'm saying as a practical advice is that you really need to take a bite of something that you can chew. So really do something that will not create false expectations, because this really adds to the burnout. So if you really do go out and listen, make sure that you complete the cycle and do take action on what has been heard, and do communicate about the actions taken, and do monitor what is going on regarding the action plan that has been set up, and do educate and train the leaders in order to fulfill the promises. So what I'm saying is that do one thing, but complete it fully in every aspect that it has. And that is so much important. It's better to do one thing and complete in comparison to doing many things and really leave them hanging. So that is a very important thing to keep in mind. At the same time, I would like to say that there is individual responsibility within the organizations from every one of us, but at the same time, organization has its own responsibilities. So it's a combination more and more as we get into the AI era. It's more and more a combination of individual and collective approach, because in that way you have the ideal scenario of respecting the individual, but also making sure that as a whole, as an organization, you really operate in an optimal way.
Thank you. Anush.
Okay. If I have to think of practical ways, I would say there are two parts to this puzzle. There is an organizational element, and there is an element of the one who's actually going through it. So, from an organizational standpoint, there needs to be a leadership commitment, acknowledgement that yes, this is a serious issue, and the leadership is committed to preventing it from happening forward. Now, whatever be the cost of that, whether it is a change in your operating model architecture, whether it is about reconfiguring and reassessing your policies. When it comes to the solution, what I've seen work in most of the companies that I have offered the consulting services to is design thinking works. Involve the people who are impacted. They are the ones who will tell you what works. Involve them in that process. Like we have mandatory leave, these mandatory, in many organizations, you have these mandatory health checkups, which are mostly physical. Why don't we offer counseling services, which are confidential to each and every employee? Training, yes, very, very important. There's no doubt, but we need to at least give the tools and the arsenal to every manager, every people leader in the organization to at least be able to spot those symptoms. When it happens, what does he do with that?
Mm.
An entire ecosystem approach is required if we really need to tackle the burnout issue from its roots. So whether it is like, some of the panelists said, resource allocation, whether it is workload management, whether it is about continuous improvement and strategies, for all that you need to fix the chromosomes, which is going back to your DNA of the organization. Where does the problem lie? If there are 360 touch points from the time somebody is a candidate till the time he becomes an alum of the organization, can we look at all those 360 points and figure out where could the derailers be? Some we can figure out ourselves, but some the people will tell us. What are those touch points? Where are those touch points? And then, like Anna said, you can always leverage AI, analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, multiple deep learning, multiple different things to look at. It's not a problem that HR alone can solve, unfortunately. It requires a golden handshake of the business, of organizational behavior specialists, of the ones who actually are going through it, and definitely HR. Only if these four wheels come together can you run a car. Otherwise, you'll always be one wheel short and always be disbalanced in your journey. And you'll always try to have somebody putting the puncher in. That would be my 2 cents on this.
Well, we are 6 minutes away from closing this conversation, and I am um, I feel so validated and healed and seen, having witnessed this past hour and having said with your insights and your energy, and you all bring different lens into this conversation. So I will have this last round a free topic round. I would invite each of you leave one message with our audience. Maybe take a little bit over a minute, close to 2 minutes each, and put your own personally meaningful message on this topic for our audience. And again, there's no theme to this question. Through whatever lens you want to leave this final bit of inspiration, the E floor is yours. But in the interest of time, what I will do, I will pass the E mic around and we will go counterclockwise from how we started. So, Anna, you will go first.
I would like very much to leave us with a thought. Um, the work is changing because during our discussion, we were very much discussing about the organizations, the work environment, HR professionals, but more and more, a lot of things are outsourced, provided through consultants, contractors, contingent workforce. And these are, in fact, employees, and they are socializing with the full-time employees of the organization. So we're talking about a very mixed work environment that more and more is going to get like that. Organizations, and that includes HR, that is very much setting up things for the people factor, need to see the full picture. They need really to see the diversity that exists, even in that spectrum. Not only the diversity that exists in different cultures, races, preferences, or whatever. They really need to see that employees now is a mixed bag of different kind of work conditions. And this creates frustrations. This creates comparisons. HR needs to have an eye and an ear towards this situation, and needs to be very practical, because all these wonderful things that we learn when we do our masters and PhD degrees, and they're great. But when you put things in theory, you really affect people's lives. We need to understand that we affect people's lives. People may die out of our actions. We need to be serious on how we take things, how we do things. We need to be serious.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much. Dave.
I was working with somebody this week, trying to get them to build a little more confidence to speak up. And the person said, I don't feel safe speaking up. And they didn't even know the term psychological safety. And I'm far from an expert in that. I know it's been covered, I think, this month as well. But I think that is an important aspect of, we talked about listening, but people should have the confidence to speak up when something's wrong. People should have the confidence to speak up when they know they can solve a problem. 2 or 3 people I've worked with recently where they've brought solutions to the table. For example, a workflow system within the organization that people, leadership had IT locked down, so people couldn't change it. And they said they know that they could do something better. They knew they could manage their department more efficiently. And leadership was not allowing them to do the basics. They couldn't speak up. When they spoke up, they were hands off. So allow people to speak up, allow people to solve problems, allow people to bring solutions to the table. When they're heard, their ideas are listened to. That gives people purpose, it aligns values, and it retains employees. And again, I'm speaking from the burnout side of this, not the organizational side. This is just what I see come up again and again and again.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. Shari.
So two things I'll say. One is, I think individuals need to you know, like understand that there is both nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with them if they have burnout, but also that there is nothing that burnout is not noble, it's not desirable, it's not a badge of honor. So I think the first one can destigmatize and hopefully help people understand that they are not alone. This is not something that is unique to them, or an indication that there is anything necessarily wrong with them, but something that they are experiencing, and that they should find somebody to discuss it with, inside the organization or outside the organization, who will approach it with the appropriate mindset and lack of judgment, but also that it is not noble is very important, because we don't want to encourage people to stay in a sustained state of high burn that is not um, sustainable for them, and that will cause them potentially harm, and that can cause the organization harm as well. So I think putting burnout in the proper perspective is very important. I also saw in the comments somebody talked about remote work
Remote.
and burnout, and I think that's a really important point. And that means that we may not, as leaders, we may not be able to see it as easily. We may not be able to observe it as easily. And so that requires that as leaders, whether it is people leaders, HR leaders, or people who provide leadership or mentorship in other capacity, that we need to we need to invite people to share, because it is not always going to come on our radar. And having the time and openness for that human to human moment is going to be important to surfacing burnout in people who might not demonstrate it, or who might not be visible for a variety of reasons.
Thank you. Anuj,
I'm going to borrow the answer from two sources. One is the title, Fix It from the Roots. And I'm reminded of a very famous saying by Abraham Maslow. He said, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. So, my 2 cents would be it's good to focus on what we do. But if you have to manage burnout, start focusing on how we do what we do. Unless you do that, everything else is just peripheral and will just fly away. And you have to add a spanner, you have to add a wrench, you have to add multiple different tools if you have to literally crack the problem at its roots, which is the how we do what we do part, which is nothing but your ways of working. Again, going back to your DNA of the organization, not something easy to change, but very much possible, and multiple use cases across the world where people have successfully done that. And for that, you need co creation, like Shari said. Don't do everything alone. You're not the only one in the world. There are experts, there are teams, the ones who have been there on both sides. It needs to be a co created solution.
thank you all so very much,
Thank you.
Anna, Dave, Shari, and Anuj. It was a joy, it was a privilege having you in this conversation. Thank you so very much, everybody in the audience, for being here, for taking the time and the curiosity, and we hope that you also took back inspiration and support, and you will be able to spread them around you in your organizations and in your lives equally. Thank you, Jessa, for taking care of us. Tomorrow we have 1 hour of HR therapy, and we will be looking at burnout within the HR profession, and we will see what is the HR flavor of this topic. Same time, you know where to find us, and I hope I will get to welcome as many of you as possible. Thank you, everyone. Be safe and take care.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Mainola. Bye.
Bye. Bye.